The Sports Reporters is a show about words. And for the past 13 years, nobody put those words together better than Dick Schaap, who left us this weekend at the age of 67. Now, for those of you who are not that old, it's important to know that Dick had one of the most remarkable and groundbreaking careers in American journalism. He was one of the pioneers of the new journalism. He wrote 33 books, and he won numerous Emmy Awards for his work in television. And no one knew more people and was loved by more people than our friend Dick Schaap. I'm John Saunders. Joining me today are three columnists who spent so many Sunday mornings here alongside Dick. Bob Ryan of the Boston Globe, Mitch Albom of the Detroit Free Press, and Mike Lupica of the New York Daily News. Bob, let's start with you. What was his greatest talent?
John, the rest of us go through life coming out of situations kind of like this, saying, I wish I had said that. Dick always said that. He could have been the replacement for Groucho Marx on You Bet Your Life, just ad-libbing his way for a half hour.
Yeah, one of the things that stood out to me when I would watch this show with you guys at home is the class of this gentleman, but at the same time to have the class and still be able to touch the regular people as well.
John, he was usually the smartest guy in the room. He was certainly the smartest guy to ever sit on this panel, and he let us be smart. People keep asking for one word, a two-word, to describe this lifetime of words. He was smart, and he was good, and he was generous.
And a leader, Mitch.
I wish I had come up with the sentence about him, but it was his friend Jimmy Breslin, who I just heard the other day, said, Dick was a friend behind your back. And that is a real skill in the fields that we're in, which are so loaded with jealousy and envy. Dick only wanted the best for all the friends he made, and he made so many friends that it would probably be easier to fill a room with people who didn't know him than people who did. But anytime he would talk to me about any of these people on the panel who weren't here or any of his other friends, it was always in the most positive way. He always wanted them to do well. And believe me, in television, in newspapers, in sports in general, that is not the rule. That's the exception.
Things don't generally go this way where you move and weave yourself in and out of news and sports. He was one of the few guys who could do that.
Well, he was a pioneer in that regard. He made that transition from the old world of print and just seamlessly made it into this type of communication. Once again, due to his phenomenally facile mind, his ability with words, and he had no trouble whatsoever making this transition. I mean, for people, I mean, out there who only know him from the show, which is a great many American people, and who think highly of him, I have in my possession a book of Dick Schaap, a collection of great Dick Schaap writings of compilations.
Oh, it's
wait a minute.
best.
It was published in 1975, Mike.
It's the best.
An entire generation ago.
His last book was about himself. Because, first of all, he had a richer life than most of the people he wrote about. But secondly, if not for that, I'm not sure people would understand, as you say, that this was a guy who came through the 60s in the new journalism, worked alongside Tom Wolfe and Jimmy Breslin at the New York Herald Tribune, covered the civil rights, covered Dick Nixon, covered Lenny Bruce, then pioneered getting into television long before any of us ever sat in one of these chairs, got into radio long before a lot of other people did. And Dick would never, I never ever heard Dick, for all the things that he began, say, I did that first. I did that before that guy. He wouldn't say it himself, so I'm glad we got it down in a book before he left.
Here's the resume. Youngest senior editor in the history of Newsweek magazine. He was in the Herald Tribune on the same page with Breslin. He understood that the second half of this century was going to be about African-American athletes before anybody did. He voted for Jim Brown for the Heisman, and then was so mad that he finished fifth that he wouldn't vote again for 25 years. I mean, you know, I don't want to quote Breslin too much on the show, because if I do, you start to get the bends. But Jimmy once said that the key to success is hanging around people who are smarter than you. And I'm telling you, there had been several incarnations of this program before Dick sat down. And then he sat down one day, and the show was good. And it was smart. And you know what we all try to do in this business? We try to elevate the conversation a little bit. Nobody ever elevated the conversation better than he did.
Tell me that you didn't have this feeling, Mike. I've had numerous times over the last 12 years sitting here, and all of a sudden in the middle of a show, you know, he'll be saying something, or maybe you'll be saying something, or usually you'll be saying something.
I don't think that.
And I'm thinking, all of a sudden I said, I'm sitting next to Dick Schaap. Now, as someone who grew up reading sport magazine, and reading, now, first of all, let's go back to the Herald Tribune. Now, of those of us of a certain age, that remains the holy grail of artistic success in the 20th century of American newspapers, and the fact that it died while other things persevere is a troubling thing for me. But Dick Schaap was a central figure in the last great waning artistic days of that newspaper. That alone made him an icon to me.
Well, not only that, but he remembered, and this was Dick's greatest gift in my mind, he remembered every story from those issues, and everyone went on. Usually, people get older, they get to the front, they go, what's that guy's name? I can't remember. Where were we? Dick collected stories the way some people collect baseball cards or collect hats or whatever. He collected people. He remembered everything. I've seen him, I wrote in a column that I wrote about him that I've seen him sitting here in the morning having a bagel, and all of a sudden someone would come up and introduce themselves, and they'd say they were from Pittsburgh, and he'd go, Pittsburgh. I took Lenny Bruce to the 1960 7th game of the World Series in Pittsburgh. And we did, I mean, you name the name. He was a Rorschach's test for people. I mean, anytime you have a preview, he had an anecdote, a story to tell, and he remembered them all, which made him better as he got older.
Mitch, you know, we're all here, and we had all these Sundays, and you know, and all of us feel the exact same way today. That, you know, give me 20 more Sundays with him, okay? But I tell people all the time, I'm sure you do, it's more fun to do this show than it is to watch it. And why was it fun? Because of him. You know, and you can't convey to people the things that would be said as soon as we went to commercial. But he always had the smart, funny line. And what he had here, as much as any place else, he had a sense of proportion, and he had a sense of perspective.
You know what? You know, I really came to realize after a while, and I was in awe of this. His passion for sports had waned. For pure sport, except for the Packers. That's another matter of time. And we also probably have to do a segment on the Packers. But his ability to absorb information was unparalleled. He could take the sports off the shelf on a Sunday morning here and handle the show with great aplomb and with great knowledge. And then when it was over, put it back on the shelf and go about the rest of his incredible, eclectic life.
And also do a parting shot in half the time.
Right, well, that's a great thing. Anyone goes back and gets an old tape of that, take mine, Mike's, Bob's, or anybody else's, and then compare it to Dick's. And Dick's was half as long and twice as good as all the rest of it.
So true.
But one thing that Dick had that a lot of people in journalism today and young people, they don't understand, Dick knew that he wasn't the story, he was a storyteller. And he never insisted that he be bigger than the people he was talking about, and he somehow found this magical formula that most of us can't seem to get, that he could be friends with the people that he covered and not violate his journalistic instincts. Dick's instincts were to be good to people. I remember him sitting here one morning. He had talked to some 22-year-old athlete who had kind of blown him off. That happens to us on a daily basis. But Dick's reaction wasn't to call the guy a name like it would be maybe. Dick's was, he was so rude. He was just so rude. Like, the assumption would be that he wouldn't be. That the assumption would be that he'd be a good person. And Dick made that assumption because he was able to be that way with everybody he met.
Mitch, I don't know if you were there the day. It was after Jeremy, his son, had done the Bob Knight interview. And then Knight had evoked Dick. You know, everybody's seen the clip. You know, you got a long way to be as good as blah, blah, blah. Now Dick does a parting shot, okay? And when you see Dick and mad, it was because we never saw him angry.
No.
And he looked into the camera and he said that Knight had made it personal. And I remember sitting here that day and thinking, whoa. And somebody said to me afterwards, well, that's really going to make Knight mad. And I said, no, you know what? Knight's going to watch that and he's going to think Dick is right, because he knew that Dick's essential decency, and I believe, and Dick believed, that they would have been friends again someday, and Jeremy would have been at the table.
Oh, I'm sure of that. There was a great quote attributed to Bo Jackson among the many tributes that I read over the weekend, and in it he said, I've only been friends with 2 sports writers. One was Dick Schaap, and I can't remember the other one.
Let me ask you guys this, because I truly believe, because we have the USA Today, because we have ESPN, because there are so many cable outlets in sports, that there will never again be a Howard Cosell, never again be a Dick Schaap. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yeah, but sure. First of all, the Times bred him, and the circumstance of when he started, it was only about print, and then he moved over. But no, and plus the breadth of his knowledge, there's just no opportunity for anybody to present themselves to the American public in quite that way. This is true in a lot of areas of
There's
American
not
life.
too many fields left to pioneer anymore. Maybe something in cyberspace we haven't thought of, which, by the way, Dick was doing for, I can't even remember what organization, but I remember he told me about the internet, and he was writing this. You got to get in on this thing, write these columns. But also the attitude isn't the same. Dick came from an era where it was okay to be friendly with the athletes, where it was okay to ride around with in a car with Joe Namath, and Joe Namath didn't think that you weren't supposed to be there. Nowadays, the gap between sports writer and athlete is so great monetarily, attitudinally, and all the rest of that. I don't know that we'll ever see
Dave Anderson,
like
the great gentleman of this business, Pulitzer Prize winning, he said the other day, and he said it before, Dick was the best of all of us. He was the most versatile, he was the most talented, he could do anything, and he could do it better than anybody else. And it's true. And Bob said something in the middle of this segment that I've been thinking and feeling in my heart for days. There was never a day that we were here that we didn't all think, man, I'm doing this with Dick Schaap.
But let's close with the fact that it wasn't about his profession. It ultimately was about his heart and the kind of person he is. And I honestly believe he's been in heaven for about a little under 2 days. He's still shaking hands with people up there because they're all, you know, that's how many people he knew and that's how many people he
Including his old roommate, Chuck Barris.
Another little-known fact that one brought out, and again, we'd be remiss if we didn't pass along our best to Dick's family. Our hearts are with you. Now, one of Dick's passions was theater. He reviewed plays for ABC News, and he liked to claim he was the only person who voted for both the Heisman and Tony Awards. The Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Angels in America, held this promise: the world only spins forward. No one embraced that more than Dick Schaap. In a moment, we'll turn our attention to the field of sports.
All right, get